On a pre-party, my friends mocked him for his appearance. I couldn't help but laugh, but then... Hello, Reddit. Long-time lurker here, finally coming out of the shadows. This is my first ever post, and I never thought I'd be writing one. But here we are. Life has a way of throwing you into unexpected situations, doesn't it? Anyway, I really need some opinions, because I'm feeling completely lost, and honestly a little guilty right now. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Emily, and I'm 29 years old. My husband John is also 29, and we've been married for about 3 years now. Before that, we'd been dating since college, so we've been together for close to a decade. That's almost a third of our lives spent side by side, growing up together, figuring out adulthood together, and building a life together. And let me tell you, John is an incredible person, like the kind of guy you don't meet every day. He's thoughtful, kind, and always puts other people first. He's not perfect, no one is, but he's as close as it gets, in my eyes. But here's the thing about John. He's not really into appearances or keeping up with trends. He doesn't care about fitting into some polished, curated version of life. He's always been unapologetically himself, and I love that about him. Well, mostly. I mean, come on. Sometimes it drives me a little crazy. Like when he refuses to wear anything other than his trusty old sneakers to events, or when he shows up to meet my friends in a wrinkled shirt because, as he puts it, it's clean and it's comfortable, so what's the big deal? And while this laid-back, no-frills approach to life is one of the things that drew me to him, it's also been a source of tension, not so much between us, but between him and the people around me. You see, my friends? They're kind of the complete opposite of John. They are the appearances are everything type. They love a good first impression, and if I'm being brutally honest, they can be very judgmental. They're the kind of people who plan outfits for a simple coffee run, who make sure their Instagram feeds look like a perfectly coordinated color palette, and who treat keeping up with trends like it's a full-time job. Don't get me wrong, I love them. They've been my friends for years, and they've been there for me through thick and thin. But they have a way of side-eyeing anything or anyone who doesn't fit neatly into their picture-perfect, trendy little world. And unfortunately, that anyone has always been John. I've noticed it from the very beginning, back when I first introduced him to my friend group in college. They didn't say much outright, at least not at first. It was little things, the way their eyes would linger on his outfit a second too long, or how they'd exchange a subtle glance when he'd make a joke that wasn't perfectly timed. Over the years, their reactions became harder to ignore. I brushed it off for the most part. I mean, I know my friends. This is just how they are. And to their credit, they've never outright insulted him or tried to make me feel bad about being with him. But there's always been this undertone, like they don't quite get him, and they're not entirely sure why I'm with him. At first, I didn't let it get to me. I mean, these were my friends. They'd been in my life long before John, and I figured that's just how they were. Blunt, a little snarky, but ultimately harmless. I told myself they didn't mean anything by their comments. And John, he really didn't care. He had this way of shrugging off anything that wasn't important to him, and my friends' opinions definitely didn't qualify as important in his world. His nonchalance was comforting at first. It made me feel like the comments didn't matter. And maybe they didn't, to him. But over time, it started to chip away at me. Their comments weren't the only issue. It was the looks they gave him when he walked into a room like he didn't belong. It was the awkward pauses when he'd make a joke they didn't get or didn't think was funny. It was the way they'd leave him out of conversations entirely, speaking over him or redirecting the topic whenever he tried to join in. And then there were the subtle exclusions, like when we'd plan group outings, and someone would suggest an expensive restaurant or a trendy event, and then glance at me raising an eyebrow. Do you think John would be okay with that? You know, how he is? The implication was always there. John didn't belong in their polished, picture-perfect world. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself it didn't matter what they thought. But the more it happened, the harder it became to ignore. And here's the part I hate admitting. Sometimes I wished John would try a little harder to fit in with them. Not change who he was, never that, but maybe just make a bit more effort. Put on a nicer shirt for a dinner party. Engage with their conversations. even if he found them shallow or pretentious. Just something to make things easier. And then there was the embarrassment. It wasn't that I was ashamed of John. I loved him deeply, and I admired his confidence in being unapologetically himself. But I could see how my friends judged him. I could hear it in their tone when they talked about him, feel it in the way they hesitated before answering his questions. They didn't understand him. They didn't understand why I loved him, why I chose him, and their inability to accept him. It felt like a reflection on me too, like they were silently questioning my choices, wondering how someone like me could end up with someone like him. And it wasn't like my friends were perfect or anything close to it. They had their own flaws, just like everyone else. Flaws they conveniently ignored while nitpicking every little thing about John. The biggest one was how obsessed they were with appearances. They could be shallow, judgmental, and overly concerned about how they were perceived by others. Everything had to look polished and curated, as if their lives were some sort of social media reel. And honestly, I hated that about them sometimes. John was the exact opposite, and I think that's part of what I fell in love with. He wasn't out here pretending to be something he wasn't, or bending over backward to keep up with ridiculous trends. He wasn't borrowing money or maxing out credit cards just to afford expensive clothes or flashy dinners like some of my friends were. They would roll up in their fancy outfits and designer bags, all while complaining about how broke they were because of the payments they were struggling to make. John, though, was practical, grounded. He knew who he was and didn't feel the need to impress anyone. And yet, despite all of that, despite knowing deep down that I preferred John's way over theirs, the pressure still got to me. That divide between him and my friends kept growing, and I could feel it pulling me in two directions. No matter how hard I tried to bridge the gap, it always felt like I was failing. I'd invite John to group events, thinking maybe this time it would be different, but it never was. They'd throw in their passive-aggressive remarks, he'd laugh them off, and I'd feel stuck, like I had to pick a side. Over time, the pressure started to wear me down. The judgment, the comments, the awkward silences, it all piled up. And instead of pushing back against my friends, I started taking it out on John. I started wishing, in moments of frustration, that he would just be different, that he'd care a little more about how he looked, about how he came across to others, that he'd put in some effort to fit into their world, even if just for my sake. The worst part is, I started voicing those thoughts to him. I didn't sugarcoat it or try to be gentle. I was blunt, even cruel at times. I'd point out his flaws as if they were problems that needed fixing, as if who he was wasn't good enough. I'd make comments about his clothes, his style, the way he carried himself in social settings. It wasn't fair. It wasn't kind. And I could see it hurt him, even if he didn't always let on. He'd give me that half smile, the one he used when he didn't want me to know he was upset, and he'd brush it off with a joke or a light-hearted comment. But I knew. Despite how cruel I was being, I told myself it was for us. I truly believed I was trying to help him, trying to make things easier for both of us, so we could fit comfortably into my world. But deep down, no, if I'm honest, I knew. It was never really about us. It was about me. It was about my insecurities, my need for approval from my friends, and my desperate fear of standing out in a way that might draw judgment. I didn't want to admit it, but I was so afraid of being the odd one out, of being the person they whispered about when I wasn't around. That fear had a stranglehold on me, and I let it dictate how I treated the person I claimed to love the most. The truth is, I let my need for validation outweigh the respect and care I owed John. And the worst part, John never stopped being himself. Through all of it, through the judgmental remarks, the snide comments, and even my own harshness, he remained steadfast. He didn't let their opinions or my criticisms change who he was at his core. He didn't try to prove himself to anyone, not to them and not to me. He just kept being John, patient, supportive, and kind, even when I didn't deserve it. But over time, something shifted. I think even John, as strong and self-assured as he was, grew tired of putting in so much effort to stay upbeat in the face of constant judgment. He began to pull away, not in any dramatic way, but in subtle ways that I didn't fully register at first. He stopped asking to join me at group events, where he knew he'd never be truly welcome. Instead, he'd encourage me to go without him, insisting he was fine staying home. At first, I didn't question it. I even felt relieved that I wouldn't have to deal with the tension. But then I noticed other things. When I'd come home and tell him how the night went, he'd listen, nod, and smile, but his replies were shorter, less engaged. He wasn't upset or bitter. It wasn't like that. It was more like he'd resigned himself to the idea that this was just a part of my life where he didn't belong, and he was okay with letting it go. At first, I thought I should feel relieved, and maybe part of me did. I told myself it was easier this way, that it kept things simpler. But the more time passed, the more I realized how much that distance was growing. And by the time I truly noticed, it was too late. I started to see the cracks I had caused, the ways I had let my friends' shallow, judgmental behavior shape how I viewed my own husband, the way their obsession with appearances had wormed its way into my head. And for what? So I could fit in with people who didn't even know the real me? People who cared more about my outfit than my happiness? Looking back, I wish I could say there was some big wake-up call, some moment that snapped me out of it before everything went to hell. But there wasn't. Change didn't come easily, and my bad habits didn't just vanish overnight. The pressure from my friends didn't magically disappear either, and by the time I understood just how much I had let those pressures affect my marriage, the damage had already been done. Then it was my sister's wedding pre-party. My sister was getting married, and naturally all my friends and I, along with John, had been invited. I honestly wasn't sure how it was going to go, but John had really made an effort this time, something that, to my surprise, really showed. He even tried to engage with my friends, and made small talk with the people who usually made him feel like an outsider. I could tell he was trying, and I thought maybe this time things would be different. Of course, things started out fine at the pre-party. Everyone was chatting, laughing, having a good time, but it wasn't long before my friends started up with their usual bullshit. The comments about John's appearance, the snide remarks about how he had changed, the passive-aggressive jokes that made it clear they didn't really take him seriously. And it wasn't just that, it was the way they talked about him, like he wasn't even there. I wish I could say I stood up for him, that I said something, anything, to shut them down. But if I'm being honest, I didn't. The alcohol started kicking in, and I joined in with them. As they mocked him, I laughed along. I don't even know why. Maybe it was to fit in. Maybe it was because I was too embarrassed to speak up in front of them. But either way, I didn't stop it. I didn't stop them. I just laughed. And the worst part, John noticed. I saw him standing a few feet away staring at me. He didn't say a word to my friends, though, which made them uncomfortable enough that they stopped. But he didn't leave immediately. He just stared. And then, without another word, he walked off. When I tried to follow him, my friends dismissed it. They said he was just being sensitive, that he'd cool down after taking a walk, and that I should just let him calm down. So, like a fool, I stayed. I thought maybe I'd give him a little time, let him clear his head. But as time stretched on, I started to get a bad feeling. I called him, but he didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. The worry began to grow in the pit of my stomach. I tried again, but it was no use. He wasn't picking up. Then my sister came over and casually mentioned that John had already left. She said he'd come to her, told her he was leaving, and asked for her permission to go. My heart dropped. I had no idea how to process it. He had left, and I didn't even know. Part of me wanted to go out and look for him, but another part of me, the one that was scared of facing the consequences of my actions, decided to just stay back and wait. I told myself I'd check on him in the morning. He had the car, after all. What was I supposed to do? How would I even find him? What if he wasn't at the house? So, I stayed. I decided it was better to just wait until morning, but when I woke up the next day, I headed to our house, hoping that maybe everything would be okay, that he'd be there, maybe a little upset but willing to talk. But got home, the house was empty. John wasn't there. That was the first thing I noticed. I told myself maybe he had gone to work early or needed space. But then I started looking around. His clothes, his stuff, was gone. His things, the things that had been in the house for years, weren't there anymore. It was like he'd moved out. My heart sank into my stomach. I knew then. This wasn't just a temporary thing. He had left. Of course, I immediately tried calling John. I dialed his number like a lifeline, but he didn't pick up. I tried again, then again. Finally, after what felt like hours, he answered, but his voice was flat, detached. That wasn't the John I knew. That wasn't the John I had married, the one who always tried to make things work, even when things got messy. He wasn't angry, but he wasn't caring either. And that was what hurt the most. I couldn't understand. I couldn't make sense of why he had left without saying anything, without even trying to talk through it. I asked him what the hell was going on. Why was he doing this? I told him he was being unreasonable, that we could fix things, that I was sorry for how I acted. I begged him to come home. I told him we could work through it together. He told me he had already made up his mind. He was done. He said he had moved out and he wasn't coming back. He told me that he couldn't take it anymore, couldn't stand the way I let my friends talk about him, the way I treated him like he didn't matter. And it stung. We went back and forth for what felt like hours. At some point, I was screaming and shouting. But no matter what I said, no matter how much I tried to convince him that I could change, that I could be better, he remained resolute. He wasn't coming back. It's been more than 2 weeks now. I keep calling, but he won't answer. I keep texting, but he won't reply. Every time my phone buzzes, I find myself holding my breath, hoping that it's him. But it never is. He's gone. And now my sister's wedding is on hold because of all this shit. The chaos I created, the mess I didn't know how to fix in time. My family is dealing with the fallout of my mistakes, and I'm not sure how to make it right. I can't believe this is happening. I miss him so much. I want him back, but I can't even bring myself to fully admit how I messed up. The shame is too much, and every time I think about it, I feel sick to my stomach. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to convince him that I can change, that I can do better. I don't know if he'll ever trust me again. I just feel lost. My world feels like it's falling apart, and I'm just standing at the center of it, unable to stop the destruction. What do I do, Reddit? How do I fix this? Update. Hello, Reddit. First of all, I honestly didn't expect it to go like this. I knew I'd be judged, but damn, the comments have been brutal. I don't even know why I'm surprised, but still, come on, Reddit. It wouldn't kill you to be a little nicer. I guess I kinda regret even posting in the first place. I was hoping for some advice, maybe some understanding, but I didn't really get that. Anyway, this will probably be my last update, because I really don't know what else to say. To answer a couple of questions, yes, my husband has officially moved out. The apartment is almost empty now, except for my stuff. I don't even know how to process how quickly he moved out. It feels like he was just waiting for the right moment to get the hell out of here. I have this overwhelming sense that he didn't do this alone. His family had to be involved. They've never liked me, and I knew they'd jump at the chance to help him get out. I can't say I'm not surprised, but it still stings, you know? 1 minute, I'm living my life, and the next, everything's upside down. And then there's my sister's wedding, the wedding I'm supposed to be celebrating and supporting. That's on hold now because of this mess. The thing is, John was the one funding the whole thing. It was supposed to be his contribution, his way of helping my sister out. But now he's pulled out entirely. He's not just pulled the money, he's even demanding back what he's already paid. I told my sister about it, and she's been insisting on giving him everything back, even though he hasn't really pressed her for it. I mean, it's the right thing to do, but it's so awkward. She keeps telling me that what John's doing is justified, that he's making a point. Honestly, I think she just feels guilty, like maybe she's taking his money for granted. But here I am, stuck. I don't have any answers, no real update, no sign of hope. John's been in contact with me, but it's just been all about the divorce. He's done. There's nothing left for him in this relationship. He keeps telling me how it's over, how he's done, and honestly, I don't know what to do with that. I can't even get him to talk about anything else. Every time we talk, it's like he's already emotionally checked out, and I'm just here holding on to something that isn't there anymore. I feel so erratic right now. This all came out of nowhere. I didn't think things would escalate like this. 1 minute, everything was fine. Well, as fine as it could be, and now everything is falling apart. I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to process it. I'm not just losing him, I'm losing everything. On top of everything, I can't even afford the apartment on my own. I'm going to have to figure something out, but I don't even know where to start. How am I supposed to handle this by myself? I'm literally in deep shit, and I don't have a backup plan. I don't know who I am without him, without us. I feel completely lost and confused. I keep telling myself that I should be stronger, that I should have seen this coming, but I didn't. I didn't realize how deep the cracks were until they split wide open, and now I'm just left here trying to pick up the pieces. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I'm terrified of facing the reality of what I've done and what's happening to my life. Everything feels like it's spiraling, and I can't find the brake pedal. I'm sorry I don't have any better news, but this is where I'm at. I'm stuck, and I have no idea how to fix it. Update. Hello, Reddit. It's been a while since I last updated, and honestly, I remember saying that my previous updates would be my last. But here I am, back again. I don't really know why, but I guess I just need somewhere to let this all out. Somewhere to vent. Somewhere that isn't just me talking to myself and spiraling further down. I know I'm probably just going to get judged and criticized again, but at this point, whatever. I guess I'll take whatever I get. So, I got served. I've been trying to wrap my head around it for a week now, and honestly, I still can't. I haven't even fully comprehended what's going on. It feels like everything's happening so fast, and I'm stuck in slow motion, like I'm watching my life unfold, but it's not really sinking in. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like I'm trapped in some kind of surreal nightmare, and I'm just too numb to process it. The whole situation has thrown me off balance, and I'm still reeling from it. It's like everything I thought was solid is now crumbling right in front of me, and I don't know how to stop it. I've been busy moving out of the apartment, breaking the lease, packing up what little I have left. Another thing slipping through my fingers. I mean, what else was I supposed to do? I couldn't afford to stay in that apartment on my own. Once I got served, I realized there was no coming back from this. It's over. There's no fixing it. He's not coming back. I keep thinking that maybe he's overreacting. Part of me understands why he did it, but another part of me feels like he's being dramatic. Like, this is something we could have worked through. We could have gone to therapy, talked about it, figured out how to make it right. But instead, he just shut down, walked away. And now I'm left here, alone, trying to make sense of everything. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know what my next step is. And everyone, literally everyone, seems to think he's right for leaving. Even my sister. She says that if it were her in his shoes, she would have moved out a long time ago. She's even telling me that I should have seen this coming, that he had every right to do what he did. She tells me that no one should have to put up with what he did. And I get it. I understand, but it still doesn't make it feel any better. I keep telling myself it's my fault, that if I hadn't made those mistakes, maybe we could have worked it out. Maybe we could have saved it. But I guess that's not how life works, is it? You don't get second chances when things get broken beyond repair. I feel like I've lost everything. The apartment, my marriage, the sense of security I thought I had. I'm not even sure who I am without him, without us. It's like I've been living in some kind of bubble, thinking everything was fine, when in reality, it was all falling apart. And now, I'm just here, scrambling to pick up the pieces and figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do next. I just feel so lost. Like, how do you move on from this? How do you rebuild when you feel like you've destroyed everything? I'm trying to stay strong, trying to push forward, but it's hard. Every step feels like I'm walking through thick mud, like I can't get out of this hole I've dug myself into. Anyway, that's where I'm at, just trying to figure it all out, trying to find a way to breathe through it. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe it won't. But right now, I'm just trying to keep going, even though it feels like everything is falling apart. Update. Hello, Reddit. So first of all, I'm just going to come out and say this. This will probably be my last update on this whole issue. I might even delete this account after this. I think I probably will. It's been a while since I last posted, and I guess a part of me missed ranting here. Or maybe I just like the attention. I don't know, whatever. Either way, this is it. This is the last of it. To answer the question I keep getting, my friends, or rather the people I used to call my friends, they are no longer a part of my life. From the moment John moved out and the reality of everything started to hit, they didn't reach out, didn't check in, nothing. Radio silence. and I realized just how fake they were. So I sent them a very, very long text. I mean, I laid into them hard. I told them to go stick it where the sun doesn't shine. I outlined every single one of their insecurities in painstaking detail, threw in all the disgusting things about them that they probably thought no one noticed. I told them how ridiculous it was that they had the audacity to criticize John for his appearance, when frankly, he was leagues ahead of them, not just in looks, but in everything. The man was making several times what they were, and here they were acting like they had any place to talk. And once I was done eviscerating them in that text, I blocked them all, every single one of them. Looking back, I should have never listened to them. I should have known better. But the thing is, I've always been more of an introverted person, and they were the only real friends I had at the time. I guess that's why I was so desperate to hold on to them, even when they were clearly toxic as hell. I wanted to keep the friendship alive, because I didn't think I could do without it. Now, I realize how stupid that was. I didn't need friends like them. I didn't need anyone else when I had John. And I threw that away because I didn't see it. Anyway, the divorce is finalized. We're officially done. It's over. We've gone our separate ways, and honestly, he seems so much happier now. He looks relieved even, like a huge weight has been lifted off his shoulders. Ironically enough, he's putting more effort into how he dresses now. It's almost like he's doing it just to spite me, to show me what I lost. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it. Whatever the reason, it's not like it matters anymore. The divorce itself wasn't even a big thing. Barely an hour in the courthouse, and it was done. No drama, no drawn-out arguments. Just over. Clean cut. I don't even want to get into the details because there's nothing to get into. It was finalized, and that was that. Since then, life has been messy. I've had to move 3 times. First, I stayed with my parents, then with my siblings, and at one point, I didn't even have a place to stay. I was actually homeless for a while, crashing wherever I could. Now, I've finally found an apartment, but well, let's just say it's not ideal. It's tiny, run down, and the so-called kitchen is laughable. It's basically a closet, not a kitchen. But hey, it's a roof over my head, and at this point, I can't afford to be picky. Speaking of affordability, I've had to switch jobs twice just to make things work. The place where I finally found a cheap enough apartment was way too far from my old job, so commuting wasn't an option. I had to quit and find something closer. The job search was brutal, and the position I landed pays way less than my old one. So now I'm living paycheck to paycheck, barely scraping by. Most days I can't even afford the basics without feeling like I'm drowning. This is where I'm at now. Divorced, alone, broke. It's like I'm stuck in thick mud, and no matter how hard I try to move forward, I just can't seem to pull myself out. Every day feels like a struggle, and I don't know if it's ever going to get better. But I guess this is the bed I made, and now I have to lie in it. So yeah, this is my life now, and this is probably the last you'll hear from me. I don't know if things will ever turn around, but for now, I'm just trying to survive. One day at a time. I apologize if this wasn't as dramatic as you all hoped it would be. I know how much Redditors love their drama. Twists, turns, explosions, all that chaos. But honestly, I don't have that for you. I wish I could tie it up with a dramatic bow, but instead it's just messy, dragged out, and honestly pretty stupid. I'm sure some of you are rolling your eyes right now thinking, why even post this then? And you're probably right, but I guess I just needed to get it out there, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's embarrassing, even if it's just one big cringy spiral. It is what it is.